Two, and one. Hello, everyone. Come on in. This is our last session of the day. Just like Erica jokingly said at the beginning of the day, she has me going first. I know Sarah was saying the same thing. I trust my people that start sessions and end sessions. And I knew that Sarah would bring it on home talking about graphic novels. So get your phones out if you have a screen capture ready, or if you just want to wait for the slide deck at the end of the presentation tomorrow. Get ready because Sarah always shares a lot of great resources for school librarians. So, without further ado, I would like to introduce to you Sarah Smith. And Sarah is from the great state of California. See, this is one of these West Coast librarians. I didn't want to have this thing early in the morning so they could actually participate. So, Sarah is from California. She is a high school librarian and she's going to share a ton of information with us. So, I'm going to shut up and take it away, Sarah.
Alrighty, thank you so much. I'm so happy to see all these people here giving up their Saturday for all these wonderful sessions. So I am going to give a bunch of title recommendations. I do have some for every level, so nobody's left out here. I do have some links. These are going to be available for you, but I do have a title rec list. I recommend getting that one up now. Because I'm only doing like 20 something in here because we only have 25 minutes, but there are 43 titles altogether on that title rec list. So there's a lot more on that list than there is that I'm going to cover today. So like Casey said, I'm a teacher librarian from California. I've been reading graphic novels since junior high, so I have a lot of knowledge to share with y'all. And I also post almost daily on graphiclibrary.org. This is my website where I put my reviews of stuff that I read. And then there's other posts and other resources on there as well. I'm not going to take a lot of time on this, just these are a lot of questions I get. So these are in here for you, some collection development tips. And then I also have on this second slide of tips is a link to a post where I really go into a lot of depth about a lot of those collection development tips, plus shelving, plus cataloging, like all that stuff to make this section easier for readers, because it's a challenge once it starts getting bigger. Then you have to kind of think about some of these shelving and organization tips. So to start off with, we've got elementary titles. And I have some of these in my high school library, so you can go downwards. So high school people, these might be good for your readers as well, but definitely don't recommend going upwards. So elementary people, once we get into like middle school, high school, you use your judgment of whether those will be good for you. So to start off with, I'm going to do an oldie but goodie, Cardcaptor Sakura. And I bring this one up because it has a current run going called Clear Card. So this is a continuation series of the series that came out when I was a kid. They have these really beautiful hardcovers of the original series that are a little bit on the pricey side, but they are sewn on the spine, so they stay together very nicely. And I have these in my high school because my students want to read Clear Card because they grew up with Sakura. So they want to read the new stuff too. Another really cute one is Nicola traveling around the demon's world. And it's this little human girl traveling with a demon proprietor who sells like trinkets and like fake stuff a lot. And she's very innocent and she's not supposed to be there. So they kind of get into this little, like they get into trouble and get out of trouble. And it's just a really cute, innocent little girl kind of discovering who she is and who the world is. Dragon Quest is a long-standing series, tons of like games and cartoons and like all kinds of stuff with Dragon Quest. But a new series that's coming out with them is The Adventures of Dai, which is good for elementary school. And Dai is the lone inhabitant on an island where there's a bunch of like ex-monsters that are all nice now because the Dark Lord was taken care of in the last Dragon Quest series. And so people come to this island now to try and get like the rewards from capturing these monsters or to do adventures or whatever. And so Dai is protecting his friends. So it is kind of cute, but it does have a little bit like sometimes there's some dark things and some fantasy violence. So it's a little bit better for older elementary. Witch Hat Atelier is one that people talk about a lot. It's won Eisner Awards. It's absolutely beautifully drawn. It's about a young witch who is discovering magic, and there's kind of a darker side to the magical world that she's kind of being swept up into. So there's 9 volumes out right now. It's kind of an easy one to collect. There's not like a ton of volumes yet, but we're already getting into some of that dark, twisty kind of stuff through in like volume 5. So there's a lot of intrigue and stuff that keeps readers going. I put Cells at Work and Cells at Work Baby in here because this is a easy one to help justify a manga collection. So these are science-based manga, and it does talk about like the body and the human systems and all of that stuff. But the cells and everything are people working in a factory. So you don't see like body parts. There's not organs. It's, the lungs is like a room. So they like deliver boxes of oxygen to a room. So it's an easy way to get some science education in a really funny setting, and just like a comedy of errors kind of thing. And then the Cells at Work Baby is cells in a baby body, and they're baby cells. So they're all cute and chibi, kind of like the little platelet, the girl in the blue shirt. She's all cute and little. They're all like that in Cells at Work Baby. So it's just adorable. Fox and Little Tanuki is a beautifully drawn, it reminds me very much of Disney animation with like the big googly eyes and everyone looks cute. But it follows Senzo, the black fox, who was a bad guy, and he now has to prove himself as a better fox, better magical animal by raising a little tanuki, who's this cute little, he's so adorable. But there are some, it's not just all about the cuteness in animals, which I know is a thing in elementary school, but there are some scarier or spookier, not nice ones. There's a badger who's kind of mean. So it's not just all about like the cutesy, like, yay, we all have animals. Like they have actual personalities and storylines to them. A non-manga title that I really enjoyed was The Oats and the Elfine. And this is a family moves to Newfoundland, and their youngest daughter gets abducted. And so the other 2 siblings go after her and are kind of transported into this magical world. And it's really reminiscent of like Labyrinth and the Neverending Story, where like thought and belief kind of make the world what it is. So like the boy Ben comes into the world with a flashlight because they're trying to find her in the dark. And in the Elfine, the flashlight turns into a sword, and it like gives him courage. So that kind of stuff like happens in this magical world with them, and it's really beautifully drawn. Like tons, like the cover, you can see the colors on it. It's like that throughout. Another oldie but goodie is coming back around, Tokyo Mew Mew. So this is it has a newer anime adaptation. It just launched end of July. So this is going to be one that students are watching. So even though it was published in the early 2000s, it's coming back around. And they have these nice omnibus editions that are a 2-in-1. So you can collect all of the editions or all the books in 3 omnibus. So it makes it nice and shelf friendly. Onto our middle school titles. First one I have is Toilet Bound Hanako-kun, which is my shirt I'm wearing today, ripping my Toilet Bound Hanako-kun. And it has like this crazy, silly title, like what is this about a toilet? But it's really, it's set in a school, and there's a ghost that, is bound to a toilet. It's not a Moaning Myrtle situation, but kind of. But it's these students that kind of get wrapped up in a fight between all of the mysteries of the school, and the mysteries are all of these supernatural beings that kind of govern over certain parts of the school, and there's murder mystery elements to it as well. This one I just picked up at ALA. This is an awesome book. This is Zatanna, and it stars a girl named Star, but she is kind of discovering her own magical abilities after spending a lifetime trying to not be in that world, because that's the world of her parents. But she discovers she can read mirror script, which is when the spell is written backwards. And nobody else can see it or read it like she can. And if she reads it out loud, or stuff happens. So then it kind of gets into this intrigue and all these other darker elements. But Zatanna is a comic book character that is not necessarily like an A-lister, like you don't see her in the Justice League and all of this, but she's a really wonderful backstory and just tons of content to build from. So I'm sure this is going to be more than one book. This one was a fun little adventure, Everyday Hero Machine Boy. And I'm going to spoil something, so if you don't like spoilers, close your ears. But Machine Boy falls to Earth, and like he's like trying to kill humans. And Grandpa's just out going to get tomatoes for their spaghetti sauce. And he has this epic fight, and he kind of awakens the heart of Machine Boy, so he understands like killing humans are not good. But then Grandpa ends up dying from that fight, and so Machine Boy feels terrible, and he goes to live with the wife and tries to help her, but also is learning his own humanity and growing up like a boy in the world and going to school and all of that, and listening to bands. So it's an interesting discovery, like self-discovery story. Apple Black is from this awesome publishing company that's starting to get a lot more traction called Saturday AM, and they employ, and the writers all are focusing on diverse stories, but they're all original English language manga. So these are people like that are writing manga and publishing it in English, and it's written in a left to right format instead of the traditional manga right to left. So Apple Black is about Sano, and he is like he's been trained his whole life that he's the world's savior, and he's going to, bring whatever to the bring peace and justice to the world. And he ends up going to school, and everyone at school wants to test him and see like, oh yeah, let's see your abilities. Like, how are you going to help us? And there's more political intrigue undercurrents that he's kind of getting into now that he's not secluded in his house. The Sea Serpent's Heir was a really fun adventure story with pirates. And the main girl, she is stuck on an island, and her mother is this pirate queen that goes out on adventures, and she's really upset every time she gets left behind. So she kind of sneaks out to go on her own adventure, and she has a monster inside her that is awoken by these knights, and it turns out that she is harboring this crazy big demon that can destroy the world. So she's fighting that and the people who want to kill her and trying to have adventures with the pirates. It sounds a lot, but it's really, really well done. Another oldie but goodie is Sailor Moon, which has another new edition. I think as they finish each edition, the Kodansha is just going to be like, here's another edition of Sailor Moon. But the nice thing about this one, the Nyoke Takeuchi collection, it has the same pagination as the collector's edition, which had about 1.5 to 2.5 of the original books in one. So it's a nice way to collect it all. But this edition is smaller, and the binding is a little nicer. If you're doing the collector's editions, they're really heavy books. Like the pages that they used are really heavy, and it's just going to pull from the spine. Like it's just glued in there. So those are not necessarily good for library, but this collection is better for libraries because it collects more and it has a little bit better binding on it. But this is a classic kind of timeless story that my readers still like. This was my very first manga, and it just baffles me every time a kid picks it up because I'm like, oh, it's still relevant. So they still like it. This is another fun adventure story, Win by James Tynan IV, who basically is printing money. Like everything he does is just amazing. Kids love it. Readers love it. So this is his adventure story more for middle grade or high school. And this focuses on Wind, who has a bit of magical blood in him. So he sneaks out of Pipe Town to try and save stuff, go on an adventure, but also the prince of the kingdom is leaving his kingdom because he doesn't like how his dad is trying to kill all the weird blood. So he wants to go grab his uncle, who's way up on the other part of the continent, and they basically adventure together, and there's some more self-discovery in there as well. All right, Hollow is the latest work from Shannon Waters, who is of the Lumberjanes fame. Sorry. So this is their take on the Sleepy Hollow myth. And so it stars Izzy, who's the person in the middle here at the bottom. And so they are new to Sleepy Hollow and kind of making friends with Victoria Van Tassel, whose family is part of the original story of the Headless Horseman. And at the end of one of the days, Izzy's walking home, and the Headless Horseman starts chasing her, and she starts running. And as she's running, she's like, "Wait a minute! You know what? This is a ghost. Like, he can't kill me. I'm gonna stand up for myself." And she stops and is like, "Come on, give me what you got, Horseman." And he's like, "Thank God, I've been trying to get somebody to stop and talk to me for 200 years." So it turns out he's actually trying to protect the town and protect Victoria Van Tassel. And everyone's just been running from him instead of trying to help him out. All right, now we got our high school titles, but I'm going to take a moment to cough and get whatever this is out of my throat.
Take your time. I understand. It's happened to me before. And remember, if you have any questions, put your questions in the chat for Sarah, and she can address them at the end of the presentation. So if you have any questions, please, this is a great time. She's an expert on this topic.
Okay, whew. There we go. All right, so usually that happens to me much later in the presentation, so I'm going to try and struggle bust through the last minutes here. All right, so my high school titles. So these ones I definitely don't recommend with the elementary readers. Some of them, you might want to read it first if the kids are asking for them, because they will always ask for the stuff that they probably shouldn't have. So the first one is Jujutsu Kaisen, and this one, I think all the fervor that's somewhat still around Demon Slayer, but it has kind of dropped off now that the manga is over. Some of those readers have now gone to Jujutsu Kaisen, so this is like the next biggest thing in demon books. And this follows some high school students, and one of them has a strange ability that if he eats cursed objects, which are usually parts of demons, then he can kind of put that power into his body, and he grows stronger that way. And there's a lot of other fun characters as well, but he's the main dude. So I think this one, if you don't already have kids asking for this, they're going to start, or they might already know they want it and they just haven't said anything yet. Galaxy is another DC title. And this one is about a person named Taylor, and they are aliens from another planet that was destroyed. And the general decides Taylor needs to be disguised as a human boy to make sure that definitely nobody will find her, but she's really the princess. So she feels really out of place, and then kind of befriends another girl that moves into the town, and it starts the male body starts to cause her distress. So through DC and magical power and superhero type stuff, we have this really beautiful story with a trans allegory in it that I think is really well done and is absolutely beautifully illustrated. This cover, you can see that it's like that throughout. Spy Family is another huge one. I cannot keep this one on the shelf in my library. It is hysterical. So funny comedy manga are really popular right now. So this one is about a master spy. And in order to get a job done, he has to get a fake family. So he has a wife who's secretly an assassin, a daughter who's secretly a telepath, and a dog who can get premonitions of the future. It's all kinds of complicated, and every sub character has an ability that makes things funnier, but also more entertaining. This one is just hitting print. So if students haven't asked for this yet, volume 2 is, I think, just dropping this month or next month. But this was insanely popular as a digital book. especially throughout the pandemic. And so now as a print book, kids are going to want to gobble this one up. But it's basically has been described as like Squid Games meets soccer. So it's this high stakes elimination thing that kids are getting into. Blue Lock is the facility where they are training to be the best soccer star in Japan, and it is cutthroat, it is high stakes, it is high energy, it is very entertaining. Here's another funny one to go with all the humor stuff is Deadpool Samurai. So Deadpool takes like a vacation to Japan and kind of gets stuck doing hero work over there. And there's some pretty funny stand-ins. Like there's a Spider-Man girl named Sakura Spider, and then there's a Venom stand-in who's a singer. She's a pop singer who has a Venom symbiote. So Deadpool just has to like make do with these ragtag superheroes that are very Japanese. And it's just like the Deadpool comics. If you're not familiar, he does a lot of fourth wall breaks. He makes fun of the manga creators. He makes fun of publishers. He makes fun of comic audiences. Like he makes fun of everything, and definitely like, you know, puts it to the reader. Makes fun of us a little bit. So it's pretty hysterical. Right now it's only a 2-volume arc, and the writer said that there might be more later, but at this point he's like, well, if it was 2 and done, then that's cool too. This is another funny manga, Kaiju number 8. And this one, I have to actually, like, I laugh out loud when I read this one because there's some pretty funny parts. But it focuses on this really interesting element at the beginning when the heroes have destroyed the monster or done whatever, saved the day, whatever they need to. It's not about the heroes. It's about the people that clean up everything afterwards. So Kafka is on the cleanup crew who's charged with like breaking down the carcass and everything. And he gets infected, so to say. So he can turn into a kaiju now and decides to go out for the Japanese Defense Force, which is the heroes that actually take down the monsters. So he's in training to try and see if he can become one of those good guys that doesn't have to clean up all the mess all the time. Lost Lad London is a murder mystery that takes place in London, and it stars this cop with a kind of chip on his shoulder. He's going to prove that he's still a good cop, and he takes on this case where the boy on the right kind of gets tangled up with the murder of the mayor of London. And in volume 1, there's already like 4 or 5 layers to this mystery, so I can only imagine how twisted and interesting it's going to get. So it's a good one for your murder mystery fans. Lore Olympus, volume 2 just came out over this summer. So this is a retelling of Hades and Persephone, and it's set kind of in a modern-ish world. Like they have buildings, they go to jobs, they have cars. And this is hugely, hugely popular on Webtoon. And so it's now getting bound into these beautiful color print editions that my readers enjoy. Here's another one. I'm sorry, I'm on a funny kick today. But here's another funny manga, Sakamoto Days. It's kind of in the vein of The Way of the House Husband. Mr. Sakamoto runs a convenience store. He has a wife and a daughter. And in a past life, he was the deadliest assassin. And so now there's a hit out on him because you can't just leave, you gotta leave by way of dying or whatever. So his former like protege, Shin, comes to do his master one last favor and be the one that takes him out. And instead he kind of gets adopted into a life of normalcy, and Mr. Sakamoto just kind of keeps adopting people. Like they don't want to be mobsters, they don't want to be assassins, and so he gives them jobs at the convenience store, and they fight off assassins and get into silly trouble. Summertime Rendering is another like murder mystery, kind of darker story to go for those horror fans. And this has elements of like demonology, folklore, and a time loop. So it's at first seems kind of like, Groundhog Day, like you're just watching the same thing over again. That's silly. But the main character, he has a chance to not just relive his life, the last couple of days of his life, but also to learn from things and learn from mistakes and try and correct things. So it's a story that really builds and get it will probably warrant rereads as things are like, as you figure out what's happening and go back and see, oh, that's where this ties into that. Like, it's really well done. And then if your students haven't been asking for this yet, they will be. Tokyo Revengers is another one of those that has been really popular digitally and is now finally coming to print. And they are also in omnibus. This is another time loopy one, but the main character is getting sent back to, he's an adult and he's getting sent back to his junior high self to hopefully like save people, stop a gang, and potentially make his adult life better. So those are the titles I'm going to focus on. There's a bunch of other resources on the last slide there. And thank you. Now I can do all the questions. Woohoo!
Yeah, just take a deep breath, get some water, because I know that you were kind of struggling there, and
I know, I'm
I
sorry,
know
my
I've been
voice.
there. No, 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 I've been there before. There are a couple of questions that popped up, and I don't know how you did it, but you were able to answer a lot of them while you were like you didn't even take a pause with your presentation. Here's one question. I see that you've compiled a recommended title list on your website. Will you keep up with those going forward? I have some ground rules. I have some ground to make up, and those lists will be invaluable to me.
Yeah, so I did an elementary recommended reading because that's like there's not enough elementary titles, so it's a question that comes up a lot, especially on Twitter. As Ashley, I see Ashley's in here; she can probably attest that too. So as I've come out with another elementary title, I add it to that list. I don't yet have a middle school one. That's the next one I'm going to do. And I probably won't make a high school one, just because almost everything I read is high school. I'm like, just go to the site; it's everywhere. But it's a little bit harder to sift through. I think I have almost 600 reviews on there now, so it's a little harder to find the specific elementary ones that kids are going to like right now.
This is a common question I keep seeing. Is it the supply chain demand that's really affecting getting the manga from overseas into the US that is the issue? Because it seems like everywhere you go, things are not in stock.
Yeah, the supply chain, where there's a paper shortage, like worldwide, and then a lot of the printing for manga happens in China. So every time there's an outbreak, and they shut down a whole province, like then the printing house is shut down too. So it has been difficult, and it is kind of getting better. So I right now recommend a lot just getting ebooks if you can't find them physically, and then just keep trying. Mackin has done pretty well about showing what's in stock on the website. A couple other places do that as well. I don't think Fall Ed does. I usually have to call them and be like, which one of these are not in stock? So you can not waste your time and find out half your order is not in stock.
Okay. Okay. Here's another one. Any suggestions? A suggestion of an option for kids asking for Demon Slayer in middle school, which Mackin says is for grades 10 and up.
It depends on if your community will support blood and violence. So that's the main reason why it's rated for older readers. Is they're not shy about killing characters right on the page, like decapitations just right there, blood everywhere. Like, so it's not, if the worry is for like sex or nudity, then that's not happening in Demon Slayer. It is just for the violence. So if you've never had a problem or never had anybody say like, oh, I can't believe you have like, kids with swords fighting in your books, you might be okay with it, but I would recommend going to like Barnes and Noble or something and flipping through the pages and seeing how violent it is for yourself before you buy it all, and find out like, oh, this is a little bit way too much violence.
Another question that's popped up. Let's see here. Does Comic Plus filter for grade levels? Does Comic Plus filter for grade levels?
They do. They have a specific elementary, middle school, high school collections, and you can buy into those. We've also kind of looked at doing it district wide, and then you can tell which schools gets which level of license. And then as the librarian, I can also go in there and um, take off titles. Like I found one that was a little bit too risque for my community,
Hmm.
so I turned that off. Um, and then they also have it at the public library, so I didn't feel bad. But it wasn't me that had it.
And last question, where do you source your manga?
I get a lot of it from my local comic book store, and some of it from Mackin. And then I just recently kind of got in with purchasing, my school purchasing office, where I can get stuff off of Right Stuff with one F, Right Stuff. But they only take credit cards. So if you don't have a way to purchase at your school with a credit card, then that's not going to work for you.
Probably to do the oh, it's sometimes
Reimbursement, yeah.
it could be a nightmare getting a reimbursement because it's
Yes.
just the paperwork and justification. Sarah, as always, I've always heard you speak and enjoyed your presentations. You bring so much insight into this area that I am still struggling with. But because my students are lovers of the genre, I will continue to purchase the books, and I will still be on the struggle bus. But you have been a guiding force in my life. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So I want everybody to give Sarah some love in the chat before we close out. And the next session is not like a long session. It's not even going to be 15 minutes. It's just I want to close out with you guys before we say good night for the evening. So everyone, if you can, just say thanks, Sarah, so she can see it on the screen. I'm gonna pop them on fast as I
Thank
can.
you. Thanks, Janet. Janet works in my district. Thanks, everybody.
I just love when people have much more knowledge than I do, and they can provide some insight. And I've heard a couple of titles here from middle schoolers that I said, okay, I think I might be able to try this. So they're going to be on my list, and I have a wonderful comic book store it's in College Park, Maryland, actually. So I'm going to go check them out and some of those titles. So thank you so much. We're going to end here. And if everyone could go over to the last talk for the day, that will be it. So thank you. And thanks again, Sarah. Bye bye
Thank
now.
you, Casey.
Mhm.